Hello and welcome back to the Wisdom of Odin. My name is Jacob Todson and I make videos on ancient religions and how they still survive today. And in this video, we're going to be discussing the goddess or the hag of winter, the Cailleach. Now, the Cailleach is a really interesting being because even though some people revere her as a goddess, her relationship to the Irish, to the Scottish, and somewhat to the English as well, is the Cailleach is more of a benevolent being than a benevolent one. So we're going to discuss what survives in mythology, what aspects she contains, some of the folklore around her, and what this means for you today. This is a really interesting video because normally I cover gods and goddesses that are worshipped and do good things for you, but the Cailleach kind of falls into a category of evil beings a little bit. Like, she's not worshipped because you love her. She's worshipped so she doesn't kill you. And this is a much different relationship to the gods, especially than people are used to today. So obviously lots to talk about in this video. Where I'm filming today is the beautiful lands of Avalon. This is the Glastonbury Tor right behind me here. And this is just a view of Avalon, or the county of Somerset. The time of me filming this is November 1st, which is the first day of the Celtic winter. And so it felt like a really good time to talk about the winter goddess. And that's part of the initial folklore here, is that she is the winter goddess. She's the winter hag. And that is kind of where I want to start this conversation. So November 1st is the start of winter, which is the time that the Cailleach reigns. The origins of the Cailleach's name roughly means the hag. And this is important because a lot of the information that we have that survives about the Cailleach is contained within folklore, which is mostly oral. There is some written source material on the Cailleach, but again, it's all coming from folklore. And then there's place names. So there's a lot of places around Ireland and Scotland, particularly named after the Cailleach or the hag in particular. And so this is, again, where we can get some things. I have to be a little bit vague here just because I'm used to talking about things that come from source, like there's a book written about it. And this is just sadly not the case when it comes to the Cailleach. And I think the one I can talk to right away is a story I encountered in Skye when I was traveling there last year. And it's the story of the Cailleach Vor, which was like kind of this mountain winter goddess, and how she did battle with another like hero-like being named Scothic, and they battled in the mountains for some time. And this is also a thing we see the Cailleach combined with mountains. There's a lot of folklore and legends about her kind of walking across the mountains. There's legends about her, like, you know, stuff falling out of her pocket, and like that creates the mountains. And so being tied to winter and mountains are like key components to a lot of her folklore and stories. A lot of the research I'm coming from here was done by a man named Donald Alexander Mackenzie in the early 1900s. He was a folklorist from Scotland that wrote a lot about the Teutonic myths, and well, he wrote a lot about a lot of the myths around the world. And there's one thing I'll link down below. It's going to be a lot easier for you to read there, discussing the Highland goddess. And I think that's where we really need to talk here, because his idea is that in Scotland in particular, and in Ireland, is there was a much older race of gods that existed there. And those gods were replaced by the Tuatha Dé Danann, much more benevolent gods, gods that were helpful. But those gods never truly reached the lands of Scotland, is what he says, is that the more malevolent gods existed in Scotland in particular. And so in a way, the Cailleach is a representation of Scottish paganism as much as it is about winter in general. Because the idea of winter is that it takes away. Winter is not often seen, especially in the past, as a good time of year because it's harder. You can't grow things. It's cold, it's wet, and it's the time of year that people often die, especially the elderly. And so when you manifest a deity into this, it's not a kind one. And so when the Cailleach takes over, a lot of the legends contained within her are legends of appeasement. So she doesn't take away children, so she doesn't take away the dead, or the old and the elderly. And so a lot of the folklore around her are about like singing to her to make her go away, about giving her offerings to make her not kill people. It's really fascinating because it really clashes with the love and light narrative of a lot of neo-paganism today, as very evident by the very quick argument I got into with a love and light person that just walked by me when I was sitting here talking about the Cailleach. It's like, nope, there is only love and light, there is only sunshine, there is only love. And like one of the things I told her is the sun always sets, winter always comes. Living in a land of love and light and warmth and sun and abundance. It sounds nice, but the sun will always set, night will always come, and winter will arrive. And the Kaliak is kind of the remembrance of that and the manifestation of that. I'm going to read for you a quote from Donald Alexander Mackenzie on the description of the Kaliak. In some versions of her story, the Kaliak is an ancient giantess with one eye, dark blue skin, white hair, and rust-colored teeth. This fearsome appearance reflects her connection to the raw, untamed forces of nature. She is a creator credited with forming hills and mountains simply by striding across the earth. In some traditions, she uses these landscapes as stepping stones, each one making her path. Another thing to add here with the Kaliak is there's not just one, and that's what makes this conversation so difficult, is there's not just one version of the Kaliak. It seems there are multiple Kaliaks and only some survived history, and this is again where we get multiple place names. So there isn't just a Kaliak of Ireland, there isn't just a Kaliak of Scotland. There's Kaliaks of certain mountains, Kaliaks of certain rivers and streams and shores, Kaliaks of sacred hills, and a lot of those legends have probably been lost to us at the same time. So as I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, her primary time of reigning is between November 1st, the Celtic winter and the New Year, all the way to Beltane. Now, there's an interesting combination here with Groundhog Day in the US. Stay with me. So there's a legend that on February 1st, Imbolc, St. Bridget's Day, that if the sun is out, that means the Kaliak is able to go out and harvest more wood. So that means her fire for winter is going to burn for longer. And therefore, you're going to have a longer winter, much like if the groundhog sees his shadow. And then if it's a cloudy day on Imbolc, that means she's not going to go out and collect wood. And so winter will end sooner. And this is the kind of stuff, like reading this, I'm like, that's such a cool little folklore myth. I don't know exactly where that one originates from. And that one could come from like a little village, or it could come from a larger community. And a lot of my research admittedly has come from like the internet, but I've been trying to check my sources as much as I can. Donald Alexander Mackenzie seems to be one of the best sources I've been able to find. There's an article, the article that I've been mentioning here, the Highland Goddess, has been really good. Like I said, if I can, I'm going to try to link it, hold me accountable to that. If I don't link it down below, please comment at me and make sure I do that, because I found a PDF and it's really interesting. I'm gonna have to read this one to you because it's in like a Scottish word. But on the west coast of Scotland, her powers are especially celebrated in the Gulf of Corryvreckan, because there is like a whirlpool that comes there around wintertime, it seems. And the legend goes is that she goes there to wash her plate. So she goes there to wash her clothes is because there's a whirlpool there. And then there's another story about her particularly being a wind goddess and containing the winds. And this is because there was a seafaring village in Scotland that during most of the year when weather was good, and then one time of the year the southwestern wind would come in and cause a lot of mayhem to the fishermen there and destroying their livelihoods. And so they personified this into a Kaliak, and they would sing songs to her to make her go away. So when it comes to this video, people I think watch these videos be like, ooh, how do I worship these goddesses? But the Kaliak, it's like the worship is not what we're used to. It's not Kaliak, do something for me. It's Kaliak, go away. Go away quicker, please. One of the really interesting things about the Kaliak is there's a site in Glen Leon, I believe it is, that has a ceremony that's been done to the Kaliak for an untold amount of time. I'll put up pictures for you, of course. I haven't been there myself. I really want to, but it's often touted as the longest running pagan ceremony in the world, is because there is like kind of this like little shelf, like a shelter, and there's these little stones that represent the Kaliak and her children. And supposedly the people of this valley made a deal with the Kaliak that they would do this ritual and they would like protect her children, and that way she would leave them alone and give them prosperity. And so still to this day, people during the winter months will bring in the little rocks and then the husband and then the Kaliak, and they put them back in the shelf. And then the summertime, they bring it back out again. And they're still doing this. They're still maintaining the site. And so clearly these people like made a deal, and I think that's the thing. It's making a deal with her rather than actually like worshiping her. So I think that's a good time to bring us into the segment of this video discussing like, why am I discussing with this? And I think the main reason is because history, mythology, folklore, ancient religions, these things fascinate me, and I hope they fascinate you too. But as far as like a modern practice, I think the Kaliak is an interesting motif to bring it within celebrations, within ritual itself. Because again, the Kaliak isn't something you're necessarily going to build a big statue to. But I know there's traditions as well about carving something of the Kaliak and then burning them for the winter season. So you can like burn an effigy of her, and that's something that is, November 5th, burning an effigy of Guy Fawkes, in England. And so this is not outside the realm of humanity, is burning effigies of beings you don't like. And so burning effigies of the Cailleach is a possibility of modern paganism. I know within certain Samhain celebrations, or Samhain, as I've been hearing here in Glastonbury, is you can have people represent the Cailleach within kind of like a play a little bit, and then she's going to perform something within a ritual. And within my book, A Glastonbury Tourist, which I'll reference here, I wrote a book called A Glastonbury Tourist. One of the roles I gave the Cailleach is as a performative piece within a ceremony during Samhain, and they essentially welcome in winter. And I think just in general, if you're doing any kind of winter celebrations, winter festivities, winter rituals, invoking the Cailleach as a way of discussing winter, I think is a powerful thing. It's a way to calling into Celtic, Irish, and Scottish heritage, acknowledging the hardships of winter. And I think that's the big one here, is that winter is hard. Winter was much harder for our ancient ancestors, and it's still hard for some people today. Winter is a time of darkness. It's a time of cold. It's a time of being stuck inside with your friends and your family. It's a time of year of struggle. And luckily, we don't have to struggle as much. And so I think our relationship to the Cailleach has changed. And so in the past, people might have been giving offerings of appeasement saying, please leave us alone. Whereas today, we have the great privilege of being able to possibly invoke the Cailleach and say, we honor our ancestors for surviving the Cailleach, for surviving winter and getting us here. And so I do think the Cailleach in some way has a place within our lives today. Does that mean I'm necessarily going to go around and offerings and rituals and worshiping her? Not so much. And I know there's some people that do that today, and that's perfectly fine if that's what you wish. But it definitely seems that the Cailleach is not a deity to give offerings to ask her to do things for you, just ones that you ask her to go away. But I think that's all I have to say in this video. There's a few other little odds and ends I probably could have mentioned. I know there's one story about her possibly drinking from the Well of Life at the winter solstice, and then throughout the rest of winter she de-ages, and then eventually becomes young again, and that's what restarts the cycle. But ultimately, as it comes down to a lot of the Celtic subject material we talk about, it's about the natural world. It's about the never-ending cycles of life. The winter will always come. And acknowledging that through ceremony, acknowledging that through poetry, through folklore, through song, through dance, through theater. These are all important things because it's something our ancestors were doing. It's something that the Christians after the pagans were doing, and it's something that we still do now. So yeah, honoring the ancient ways, honoring the ancient traditions, and acknowledging the presence of winter, the harshness of this time of year. I'm freezing as I'm recording this on this hill, and let me know your thoughts down below about winter, how you celebrate it, and I'll be seeing you real soon for the Yule content here that I love producing every single year. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video here on the Wisdom of Odin.